Hello, everyone, and welcome to Davenant Discussions. My name is Ben Miller. I'm here today with Dr. Brad Littlejohn, the president of the Davenant Trust. And in this series of videos, we are discussing the four core ideas or pillars of Davenant's work and mission. We've identified those with four words: reason, retrieval, engagement, and essentials. And this second video is about retrieval. Retrieving the riches of the church throughout history, the theology of the historic church is a huge part of what Davenant is about. You've described the mission of Davenant largely as a translation project, to take things that have been thought and said and done in the past and bring those into a modern context for the benefit of the church. But if the Bible, we're Protestants, if the Bible is our primary authority and the primary thing we look to learn the mind of God, what then is so valuable about the doctrines and traditions and even liturgies and rituals and customs of the church throughout history? Why is that so very important to us as God's people today?
Well, I think the first thing to do is to challenge a kind of theology or the Bible dichotomy that many people have. I mean, when we're trying to retrieve the legacy of great theologians throughout history, what we're trying to retrieve are the legacy of great readers of the Bible. I mean, in many ways, we have an image of many of these men as sort of arid scholastics, but that's not really accurate. I mean, most of these men were first and foremost expositors and preachers of the Scriptures. And so I think, well, a project of retrieval starts with Genesis 1, or Genesis 2. It's not good for man to be alone. And that goes for our knowledge seeking as much as for anything else. So for me to be seeking out what does the Bible mean and how do I apply it to my life, I should be doing that not by myself, but in community with other minds who can help me in that task. And why confine yourself, if we have this 2,000 years of riches there, why confine yourself to co-readers from your own day, right? So why not if we have access to the greatest intellects throughout history and their meditations on the Scriptures, let's make use of that.
It's part of honoring our fathers.
Exactly.
How does this Protestant reformational appeal to church tradition, and whether that's the theological tradition or even traditional practices, how does that differ from the Roman Catholic appeal to tradition, really as a source of authority in the life of the church?
Well, there's a number of differences, but I think one of the key ones is that what we would say about the value of church tradition is not really something distinctive to church tradition as such. It's not some special gift that the Spirit has given to the leaders of the church to kind of give them a sort of second degree of inspiration or preserve them from error, so that the church fathers have a kind of unique spiritual authority in that way. It's simply the wisdom that you would use in any other area of life. I mean, if you're studying medicine, okay, you're not going to start from scratch and just start dissecting bodies and figuring out how it works. You're going to learn from the established wisdom in the field, much of which goes back a very long way. And in theology, it goes back considerably further than in modern medicine. So it's just a matter of saying, if you're going to learn any field, then look for the great books in that field. Look for the wisest authorities in that field, and defer to that wisdom instead of trying to start from scratch. And I think we just need to say that is true of the wisdom of the church throughout history, as much as it's true of the wisdom of any other community reflecting on some area of truth.
Let me nudge this question again, though, about the primacy of the Bible. We don't want to be distracting Christians from turning to the Scriptures as their ultimate authority for belief and practice, and maybe relying too much on what other people have said about the Bible instead of engaging the Scriptures for themselves. And I know you've developed some metaphors to kind of help explain this, but can you open that up for us a little bit?
Yeah, well, I think a helpful metaphor is to think of it as that historical theology and systematic theology is like a map. Okay, the Bible is this rich terrain that we're called to explore and familiarize ourselves with, but it's also a jagged, dangerous terrain. Okay, I mean there's mountain ranges, there's pitfalls where people have gotten confused about the meaning of passages. Paul
says you can wrest the Scriptures to your own destruction.
Exactly. So if you you can say I'm going to be a lone explorer and sort of set off on my own across this terrain, and because I want to get, that's the best way to get to know it properly. It's just me out in the woods by myself, and that can be rewarding. But the danger there is, of course, if you're not going to follow the well-trodden pathways, then you are going to find yourself sometimes running off a cliff or into a swamp,
Or just lost.
And if you do. And often I would say, I mean, it's not often the kind of let's kind of put aside kind of how the history of how the church has understood this passage or this concept, and let's try to wrestle the scriptures anew, and let's do some fresh exegesis. That can yield some real fruits. But just like someone kind of saying, hey, let's find a new path through these mountains, that might be better than the old one. It might be better, but it's going to take a long time before it is more usable, right? I mean, if a new path always needs to be well trodden and kind of figured out, find what the pitfalls are and widen the path and so on before the ordinary Christian can tread it safely. And I think it is important for those who are doing fresh exegesis to recognize that even when they are discovering some great new stuff, still the ordinary Christian is perhaps well advised to stick to the well-trodden paths most of the time.
Let the broader church weigh in on these.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, a sort of practical question, though. We are living in a time when there is a lot of hostility rising against the Christian faith. There are a lot of challenges in Christians just being out in the public sphere now. Is it really worth our time to be spending time going back and digging up the writings of fairly obscure figures like Musculus or Zanchi or whoever it might be, Reformation, Second Reformation figures? Is this not sort of an ivory tower exercise for people who just have a lot of time on their hands? Does it really help the average Christian today?
Well, I mean, the answer to this is kind of a cliched answer, but there's nothing new under the sun. However new the challenges that we think that we're facing are, in reality, human nature doesn't change all that much, and we tend to find that they are new versions of the same old problems that have been often worked through very carefully by thinkers before us. And I think here, I remember when I went to study, I did my PhD in Edinburgh in political theology. I tell people the thing that I learned most from that entire time of study was simply a result of the fact that I was doing it in the UK. And I was having, for the first time, an outside perspective on America and on American political life. And being able to see things from the outside suddenly helps you see things more clearly, I think, in many ways. And I think it's the same way. Yes, we're called to be faithful today with the challenges God has given us today, but we need to take a step outside of our own shoes and look at it from some historical perspective if we're going to be able to see clearly enough to face those challenges today.
I think those topographical metaphors are especially helpful in understanding, so thank you very much.
Thank you.